Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bring you our 2014 Week 1 Canadian Football League preview between the Montreal Alouettes and the Calgary Stampeders. Now let's size up both teams in this matchup, starting with the Alouettes.
The Montreal Alouettes come into the season with a lot of optimism, and rightfully so. They have a young offense that got progressively better last season, and their offensive line is one of the best in the game. They've also added some solid vets at receiver with Dave Stala and Chad Johnson to go along with S.J. Green and the sensational second-year player, Deron Carter. Defensively, they were the best at stopping the run and also finished second in the league in sacks with 59. Gone to Shea Emery from the linebacker position, but Kyrese Hebert and Chip Cox should be able to keep the unit from missing a beat. And in free agency, they added former Saskatchewan Rough Rider defensive tackle Jermaine McElveen, who also had 6 sacks last year for the Riders. Now, second-year linebacker defensive back Mike Edom is a budding star as well, had a sensational rookie campaign. So as you can see, the talent is definitely here for Montreal to succeed. Consistency will be the key in 2014 for the Alouettes. Bo Levi Mitchell will get the start this week at quarterback for the Calgary Stampeders, who also enter the season with a ton of high hopes. The Stamps are one of the most well-balanced offensive attacks in the game, with a three-headed monster of running back John Cornish and wide receivers Nick Lewis and Marquay McDaniel. The only offensive line and defensive line that were statistically better than the Alouettes were the Stamps. Calgary quarterbacks got sacked the least, while opposing quarterbacks got put on the ground the most last year. A couple of young players that figured to have a big impact in the trenches are 2014 rookie draft pick center Pierre Levertu, who can also play guard if need be, and defensive end Ben DeAguilar out of McMaster, who's a second-year player with tremendous athleticism. The Stamps do come into this game a bit nicked up, with 3 guys on the offensive line and defensive line out for this game. And when you look at the secondary, there's a ton of playmakers with Fred Barnett, Lynn J. Shell, Keon Raymond, and Jamar Wall, to name a few, and this bodes well in this matchup versus one of the most talented receiving corps in the CFL. Now, here are some coaching points for both teams in this ball game. For Montreal, trench warfare is going to be key. This is the number 1 and number 2 offensive and defensive lines going head-to-head in this battle, and they're going to have to win on both sides of the ball in order to have a chance. And no yak on defense can be given up. Nick Lewis is one of the best after the catch, and also Marquay McDaniel. And even in the running game with John Cornish, they have to get these guys on the ground if they want to have a chance. And on offense, efficient passing will be the key. Don't go for the home run very early. Allow that running game to set itself up so where that play action pass can give you the big plays you want deep down the field with Chad Johnson and also Deron Carter. And for the Stamps in this ball game, they have to test the rookie defensive back out there, Andrew Liu, who was one of the top cornerback prospects in this draft class, a big corner at 6'2", 200 pounds. This is his first regular season game in the CFL, going against one of the best receiving corps in the game. So you have to test him out there early and often. I would also work that screen game early against this Alouettes defense. You know, they love to blitz with their linebackers. Both Chip Cox as well as Kyrese Hebert are terror on A and B gap pressures. Work that screen game to neutralize some of that pressure coming your way. You have to close the door on Troy Smith, keep him bottled up tackle to tackle, and force him to make plays consistently from the pocket. The key matchup in this ball game will be the Alouettes receiving corps versus the Stampeders secondary. We know the Stamps can apply pressure, but the Alouettes also can protect the quarterback very well, so that neutralizes that aspect. So when you look at the receivers position by position, body by body, this is a key matchup, and everyone in that secondary for Calgary will have to bring their A game. Otherwise, they could find themselves getting beat by the Alouettes at home. The X factor in this ball game for Montreal will be their run defense. They were stout last year, best in the league. They're going against the best running game in the CFL now with John Cornish and the Calgary Stampeders, and they're going to have to be consistent throughout the course of this game. They can't have any leakage, otherwise they can find themselves getting gashed on the ground. And the X factor for the Stamps will be quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell, who's named the starter for the season. And if he can come in and hit the ground running like he did last year, when he threw 10 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions, it bodes well for the Stamps moving forward. And they're a very tough team to beat when they're firing on all cylinders. Quarterback Sam Echeverry is definitely a legend amongst Montreal Alouette fans. Played there from 1952 to 1960. He's a 2-time Jeff Russell Memorial Trophy Award winner. He led the CFL in passing 4 straight years and was the first professional quarterback to go over 4,000 yards in a season. Willie Burton was an outstanding running back for the Calgary Stampeders, played his entire career in Calgary where he became a two-time West All-Star, the 1975 most outstanding player as well. In his second season, he set the CFL single-season rushing record with 1,896 yards and finished his Calgary career with over 6,200 yards rushing. Now let's take a look at our CFL Fantasy Football Huddle for some guys that you should start and sit in your fantasy leagues for this game. You look at John Cornish, Nick Lewis, Marquay McDaniel. I think all of those guys on that offense you should start if you have them on your team. Those guys are as consistent as they come. And for the Alouettes, I would start Deron Carter. I think he's going to be a big-time target in this game, as well as S.J. Green. And I would go with the defense and special teams of the Montreal Alouettes because of their ability to, one, stop the run, and two, get pressure on the quarterback consistently. Now, here are some guys that will probably sit if you own them on your team. Both quarterbacks in this ball game, Troy Smith and Bo Levi Mitchell. I'll look at what they bring to the table. A lot of talent, but I don't think they'll put up big numbers. I think they'll do a great job in spreading the football around, and that could also mean guys like Chad Johnson and Brad Snobely won't see the opportunity, so I would sit them as well. And I don't believe the Alouettes run the football enough to where Brandon Whitaker would be a wise start versus that Stamps defense. And I would also sit the Stamps defense because, like I said before, they have a lot of injuries coming into this ball game in the trenches, so I wouldn't feel comfortable starting them versus the Alouettes. And what will be a very close game, I like the Alouettes in this matchup. I look at what they do well defensively. They can apply pressure. They blitz a lot with their linebackers. And quite honestly, they come into this ball game a little bit healthier than the Calgary Stampeders, especially in the trenches. And I think that right there will be the biggest X factor in the outcome in this ball game. And also look for Troy Smith to have a fine day throwing the football, just being efficient and keeping the offense on pace. So I like Montreal to knock off Calgary in week 1. And don't forget to tune in live every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for Football Game Plan's Road to the Grey Cup podcast as we break down every game on the CFL schedule, give you fantasy football advice, and also bring you all of the news, notes, and tidbits from around the Canadian Football League. And again, that's every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Football Game Plan Radio Network located at blogtalkradio.com/footballgameplan. And I also want to give a huge shout out to CFL Fan Forums for always showing Football Game Plan support.